Hi, everybody. This is Melissa Norris again from James Beck, boutique executive search firm focused on the investment management community. I'm here again today with Michael Hepner, who is founder of GK Training, which is a communications firm that we have worked with at length, as have many of our clients. He also works with presidential candidates. He works with Columbia's PhD and MBA students, and he is a tremendous help to us and our clients from a communications perspective. We're coming together to present a 4-part series around communication, which includes both email communication, communication style, as well as cold calling, to do it or to not do it. Our first series right now is around email construction, if you will. So I would start asking Michael around, what's the length of an email? What's the appropriate length of an email you're sending, prospect or otherwise? And how much time should you be spending when you're writing your emails?
The two questions are linked. And the reason I say that is because one of the very first things we suggest that clients do is actually ask themselves a self-reflective question, a simple question: does this need to be an email? And if it doesn't, if it should actually be a text message or a phone call, or perhaps if it's not even ready yet to be written, then the first answer is don't write the email in the first place. Because email, especially right now with how much work from home we're doing, it can be an albatross around people's necks where your inbox becomes so cluttered, there's so much to get through. So the first question is, should I even write the darn email in the first place? Now, to your question about what's the right length, of course, it depends on what you're communicating in the email. But I'm so happy to talk about this subject because a lot of the coaching I do really does take time. You have to build these sort of muscle memory habits. What I'm going to share next, you can learn it one time, you can use it tomorrow, and it can be effective and you'll hang on to it forever, really. One of the biggest mistakes folks make in writing emails is they start by writing. They sit down, they start writing, okay, what should I say to this person? They start typing away, and you get long-winded stream of consciousness emails. So much better is think of the email as the 5 stages of a story: exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, denouement. And start by writing the email by asking yourself simple questions. First, what's the main thing the person needs to know? Second, how did we get here? Third, what does this mean for the future? And then how do I say hello and how do I say goodbye? That's a story. Hello. Rising action, climax, falling action, denouement. Hello, what I need to tell you about, what that thing is, what it means, goodbye. And if you think in terms of those 5 simple questions, you can actually write emails very quickly. They almost read just like a story, and the entire thing is probably a paragraph, maybe 2 paragraphs. If you get in that habit of talking first and writing second, the emails are quicker, and they're shorter, and you tend to be able to move through things much more quickly. So the 2 things come together, actually.
I have a few specific questions around email writing. Is there a rule of thumb around subject lines? Does it need to be punchy or kind of grab you? Should you have them at all? Is it a bad thing if you don't have them? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, one, you should have them. Now, certainly if you're sending prospecting emails, there's a whole bunch of rules about spam in the first place. You don't, of course, want to set off any kind of spam alerts. So there are very specific rules about what should be in the subject line, clearly stating what's in the email, lots of specificity. It can't be a bait and switch saying one thing and then the next. So those are all things to pay attention to. A second big point is you want to avoid very general things like checking in, following up, saying hello, because it could really be anything. So yes, you need a subject line. Yes, it should be specific and accurate for what's to follow. If possible, make it brief enough that it doesn't bleed off whatever device that you're reading it on. And if it can be attention grabbing, great. But the idea here is that if you put a subject line that makes people open your email and then they're disappointed with what's in the email, it's actually shot you in the foot. So what I would suggest is go for the more accurate subject line. It's not going to create any enemies. It might win you fewer friends because people might not actually open it. But probably the accuracy in that subject line over the long haul is going to benefit you.
That's helpful. What do you think about adding value-added content to a prospecting email where you don't know the person and you're just trying to create a relationship or a connection? And how do you go about adding that content?
I think it's essential. I think it's essential. And I'll reference a book here, which I think is a great principle for this. There's a Adam Grant book. He's a Wharton professor, and the book is called Give and Take. And the book is all about giving and then of course receiving back. And we all have this idea that, you know, you give and then you take, and you give and you take. And his whole point is, no, you give and you give and you give and you give, and eventually you're going to get some things back. So it's a great principle for email, really, because oftentimes, you know this as well as I do, you might have to have 7 or 10 or even 12 emails before you get any kind of a response in a prospecting situation. In order to avoid pestering people, all those emails have to somehow add some kind of value to the person's day. So yes, value-added content. Then it depends on what that is. Is it a resource? Is it an article? Is it an attachment? There's a balance, of course, if you think it will get hung up in some sort of a firewall or a spam filter, depending on how big you make the attachment or the value-added content. But my initial answer is yes, you absolutely should have that. And try to find varied things that you can send. So it's not 7 straight emails of the same kind of a resource, but it continually changes. Now, to be very clear about this, value-added content is not just like, learn more about my firm. It has to be something that is actually of use to the person. There is so much free content right now being given away, being shared because of the crisis we find ourselves in right now, that you really do have to find things that you think are going to be of value to that person. And I'll say more about that in a second, but that would be, in terms of value-added content, that's what I would try to keep in mind.
That makes sense. My last question for you is around timing of sending emails. I've heard various things about it's best to do a blog on LinkedIn on Tuesdays and Wednesday mornings. Is there similar thinking to emails?
Yeah, of course, there's a science to that. And in general, people are more productive in the mornings. They also tune out entirely on Friday afternoons, which is why you should not send your mass emails Friday afternoon. One simple way to think about this, it's a great paradigm, except for Sundays don't count, but everything else does. Think of how the news media operates. If a government wants to release something that they don't want people to pay a bunch of attention to, when do they release it? Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, Sunday is a bit of a central focus for the news media, so leave Sunday aside. But that same kind of principle that mornings tend to be best, mid-morning even better, later in the week things get worse, very end of day can be a bit frazzled for people. But the hard part here is this, Melissa, is that we live now in a global world. We live in a 24/7 kind of society. So it's very hard to know when people are going to open those emails. So there does need to be some regional specificity, thinking about who it is that you're sending these to. But those are some guidelines that you can keep in mind about when you might share material and not share material.
Great, that's awesome. Thanks so much, Michael. This concludes our first part of our 4-part series, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Sounds good.